Here we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Dynamics of Health with Timo. On the show today, I have Anesu Mbizvo. Yeah, I hope I said it right. Otherwise, she will fix it for us. Anesu is. Do you consider yourself a yogi?
Yeah, I would say that. I think anybody who practices yoga is a yogi, by my
Yeah,
definition.
by your definition. So tell me, Anesu, quickly just introduce yourself to everyone. Let them know who you are and what you do for day to day, because I know you got a classes later. So
Yeah,
go for it.
great. Cool. So, hi, everybody, and thank you, Timo, for welcoming me onto your podcast. My name is Anesu, and I'm a qualified medical doctor, but currently not practicing clinically. My day-to-day is focused on me running my business, which is the Nest Space, which is a wellness center where we have a yoga studio, some alternative therapy rooms, a vegan cafe, and zero waste grocer. And I'm a yoga teacher who focuses mainly on using yoga to help those who generally struggle with other forms of exercise because of different injuries or medical conditions. I basically help them by fusing my medical knowledge and my knowledge as a yoga teacher just to get them back into working with their bodies and discovering the strength that they still have regardless of whatever conditions have come their way.
Mm. Now your name is quite interesting. They are within us. Who's within
Yes.
who's within you? Tell me about that,
Well, the
please.
lovely the lovely thing about my name is it keeps it open-ended, which I
Mm,
love. So it just says they.
mm,
And to me that really resonates with me because, as I've been on my journey of traversing health and healing and spirituality, I've kind of resonated with quite a few different streams of thought, whether it's yoga, whether it's Western medicine, whether it's African indigenous knowledge, whatever it may be. So to me, the they is open. It can be God, it can be the divine, it can be your
mm,
ancestors, it can be
mm,
your universe, whatever you want it to mean is exactly what it allows for, which is
mm.
really nice.
Where 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 were you? Where did you live most of your life, or where were you? Let me put it. Where were you born? And I guess
Yeah.
you also
And
moved.
what happened?
What happened? I guess you also moved
Yeah.
around the whole place.
Yeah. So my dad is Shona Zimbabwean and
Okay.
my mom is mixed, but she was born in Durban and spent some time in Swaziland.
Uh-huh.
So I grew up in Zimbabwe. My family was living in Zim at the time. I went to junior school in Zim, and then after junior school, we moved over to South Africa. So in terms of time, I've lived more of my life in South Africa now. I moved over in 2005. So it's been about 15 years. And to me, I guess both places are kind of home because I have family here, I have family there, and I've also lived part of my life in both countries. So I'm kind of straddling the border, one foot in, one foot out.
Now, how much of an impact did your mom and dad have with you studying medicine?
So, I used to think that it wasn't much. I was never really pressured into going into medicine. I think my parents always imagined that I do something a little bit more creative.
Mm,
But what I can say is every day my dad would come home. He's a doctor. So he would come home and he would tell me the stories of his patients and the lives that he managed to save and just the people that he came to meet. And I think without him knowing, that sowed the seeds of interest with me where I really had this desire to help people and to connect with people regardless of their walk of life, regardless of how old or young they were. And medicine seemed like a really great way to be able to be of service, while also learning about the incredible human body and all of these magical things that it can do, which also really tied me in.
hmm. It's funny.
Yeah.
So right now you are not practicing at all. Have you practiced ever before?
Yes, I did. I practiced for about, after med school, I practiced for almost 2 years. So those are kind of the compulsory years that you do after med school, where you're kind of a junior doctor and you're learning about it.
Mm,
And I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed medicine, and being with my patients and helping the patients out. But the lifestyle of, you know, the hours of the working environment, the fact that most doctors end up working in the same hospital for their whole lives, you know, working with the same people for their whole lives. And I just couldn't see my life being that way. You know, I knew firsthand, my dad was a GP, so I did get to see him, but it's tough, man. You know, it's a struggle to balance family, personal life, and work, especially as a doctor, because, you know, people's lives come first, essentially,
Mm,
you know.
mm,
And when I started to experience that as a junior doctor already, and I was looking at my seniors, and a lot of them were divorced or didn't have really good relationship with their kids, I was like, this isn't for me. I can help and I can heal people in other ways.
now, to be fair, some doctors are actually not healthy as people see them. They're actually,
Most art.
yeah, most are a bit sick. And
Yeah.
the hours are terrible. If you are working that long of an hours, when you look at it, your longevity kinds of starts to shorten. It shortens down.
Exactly.
You can't live a bit longer as you would wish. And we want to live long. I want to live until
Of
100.
course. We
Until
want to be
100.
chugging away in the hundreds,
In the
hey?
hundreds, going
Timo, we want
for
to
a
be
hike.
coming to gym, doing
Exactly.
yoga.
You want to do these
That's what we
things
want.
long term. But if you look at those hours and how sleep, how poor sleep some people have, what do you think about these shifts people work the whole time?
Oh, you know, it's crazy. The sleep thing is actually, for me, it's the stress
Mm,
and the sleep. And as
mm,
you exactly what you're saying, in terms of longevity,
mm,
that is so bad for your body. You know,
mm,
sleep is essential, and stress, I think we all are starting to realize the impact that stress has on our overall health.
mm.
And so what the government has said is that doctors are only meant to work for 30 hours straight, right? That's what they say. That's what you're supposed to be capped at, 30
Is
hours straight working.
is this
But
worldwide? Is this worldwide or
no,
just
this is
here?
in South Africa.
Ha.
This is just here. But what actually ends up happening is, because most hospitals are short staffed, that it ends up going for much longer than that. So I remember going into the hospital at around 7 a.m. to start my day. You finish your whole workday, which goes from 7 till 5. Then if you're on call, everybody else goes home at 5 and you stay for the night.
Mm-hmm.
And you're supposed to then leave at, what is it, probably 12 noon the next day. But often what ends up happening is the patients who come in overnight are really sick. There's
Mm,
a lot of work that you have to do. You're
mm.
still short staffed. So you end up working a full day the next day and only getting home at like 5 p.m. the following day.
Shoo.
And that's not, and you can imagine that not only are you sleep deprived, but you're having to work on people's lives. You know, these are babies who are coming in who are on the brink of death, or you're having to operate on someone who's been in a car accident. So you have to be fully awake and fully focused throughout that time. It's a recipe for disaster for the doctors, for the patients. It's just not, it's not a good environment for health and healing. You would think
Mm,
that
mm.
as a sector that's dedicated to health, that health of the people within that sector would be so important, but somehow there's been a disconnect with
Mm.
that.
That is why most doctors, I remember I went to one, she didn't ask me if, am I sleeping right? Are you eating right? How are your relationships with other people? No, you need what you call depressant pills.
Psychologist or whatever.
Yeah, she said I should go to the pharmacist and get these depression tablets, and they were for 3 months. Imagine how easy it could have been for me to get addicted to them. So I told my partner, I'm like, hey, so the doctor so and so said I should go and take depressant pill, but I'm not depressed. I don't think I am. And how
Yeah.
does she know if I am depressed? Judging from where?
Exactly. And that's what I really, that's what I started to struggle with. And I think that's why I ended up feeling like clinical medicine wasn't for me, was the whole profession you get taught, you know, you get groomed throughout med school to believe that you are helping people and that you're
Mm,
changing their lives.
mm.
But most of the time, especially if you're working in government, you have about 5 minutes with a patient. You have to like ask them what's wrong. And then you end up just giving them a tablet or telling them that you have to cut something out of their body to
Yeah,
solve their problems.
giving
It's
them
like,
giving them disprints.
how is it? Yeah, I'll give you a pill or I'll cut this out of your body and that's going to sort out everything in your life without
Mm,
realizing. And I think, I became a yoga teacher in my final year of med school. And the Eastern philosophy is that health is linked to body, mind, and soul. So most of the time, when we see physical disease in our body, from the yogic perspective, it's actually a symptom of stress in the mind or problems with your, with relationships or whatever it may be. And so the Eastern way of thinking is reduce your stress,
mm,
live a healthy lifestyle, eat good food, make sure that you're happy, and inevitably your body will respond to you moving, to the food that you eat, and you won't see disease. Whereas Western medicine is not about preventing. It's like, live your life, eat all the junk food, never work out, watch TV,
chill.
don't care about your relationships. And then when you're 30, 40, or 50, we'll give you all of these tablets that you'll have to take for the rest of your life to
Mm,
try to not even treat the disease that has been caused, but just to make it more manageable for the
yeah,
rest of your life,
yeah.
you
And
know?
remember, these pharmacies people, they need you to stay hooked.
Yeah,
That's how they make their money. They need you to eat McDonald's, KFC, all the rubbish. Then they give you the pills so that they can
exactly.
keep on controlling you the whole time. That's
The whole
really
time,
sad.
yeah.
That's really
It's
sad.
terrible. And I mean,
Mm.
you can imagine going into a doctor at 40, finding out that you have diabetes, and then you have to take pills every single day for the rest of your life.
And you
And
can,
yet, if all you had to do, and the crazy thing that I think Western medicine has also done in some way is it's made healthy living seem like a chore. It's made it seem like
mm,
something that's really difficult,
mm,
that's expensive, that takes up a lot of your time. Whereas actually, when you start to live healthy and you exercise, it's really amazing. It
yeah,
makes you feel better. If you've had a bad day, it clears your mind. All of these things that we've been taught about living healthy are completely the opposite of what is true. Your
mm.
food tastes so much better. You don't feel tired after eating. You know what I mean?
and
You
and
actually feel energized.
when you look at processed food, the more you eat one, the other one leads say, eat another biscuit, eat another biscuit. You end up eating the whole basket. Where with non-processed food, just one meal, like eat your broccoli. Let's say you're eating a bunch of broccoli, and maybe whatever you meat, whatever. I'm going to get to the plant-based thing. Let me talk about meat quickly. Healthy meat, and then you are full, and you feel good, and your
Yeah.
mind is cleared up. Because when you look at, for instance, eating the bread that is baked at whatever shop, immediately after you eating that, you feel tired. And
Yeah,
imagine now
you feel that itis. That's what we used to call it. Used to call it itis. When you have a big meal and then you basically just sit back and you want to sleep and you can't do anything.
mm,
And that's not
mm,
what our food is meant to do. Our food is meant to
mm,
give us energy and
mm,
invigorate us and make
mm,
us feel fresh, you
mm.
know? But
So
yeah, I loved what you touched on about, the pharmaceutical industry. And to a certain extent, the food industry is kind of the same as
they're the
well,
same.
where it's
I
not
agree.
it's not focused on your well-being, on the customer's well-being. It's how can I make more money? And often the way to make more money is to make food really cheap, strip out all the nutritional stuff, add in all the processed stuff, hook people onto it so that they just keep on eating it over and over again.
Yeah, because if you look at people's breakfast, for instance, there's Kellogg's, there's All Brand, there's all these cereals. They are sold to us in the mainstream media as healthy. But when you look at the nutritional guide behind it, the ingredients, they've got like 20 things. How can a meal have 20 ingredients in it? It clearly shows that they want you hooked.
Exactly.
They want you,
Exactly.
they want you really hooked. The other day I was
Yeah,
at
I
yeah,
worked as a, sorry, Timo,
yeah.
what were you
I
saying?
know you can continue. I'll tell you after.
Oh, I worked as a preschool teacher for a little bit of time before
Mm.
I was able to work full time on the business. It was kind of like a part-time job. And what shocked me was the lunches that these kids were packed. Yo, chocolate, Coke, crisps. And I'm like, this is a young body, that needs essential nutrients to grow. And you're just pumping it. Sugar is a whole other story. I mean, I think you and I could have a whole episode of your podcast just about sugar
It's very big.
because especially with children, it's like, and like you say, I think people just don't, it's either that we don't know or we choose not to know. It's one of the two. But the industries that we're buying things from don't make it easy at all for any of us to make these changes. You almost have to really take it on on yourself to change your diet from being what the mainstream is.
But the other day I had a podcast with this other lady, and I was telling her that I have a big problem with these kiddies meals that are being sold in all of these places.
At McDonald's.
Exactly. Those
And
kiddies
they
meal.
even call it a happy meal.
My
Who's
goodness, who is happy immediately after such a meal? Huh? And
Oh my
people
God.
are hooked. People are really, really, really hooked. But that is why I decided, you know what? I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to be as honest as I can be. I'm going to tell the truth. I'm going to do research. I'm going to speak to people who are around, and we want to talk about these things because they are not
Mm.
immediately. If you go, let's say, on a radio show and you talk like this, quickly, studios they know just cut, or they edit things out that people shouldn't hear. Remember, we live
Mm.
in a world where it's not really freedom of speech. If you want to have freedom, you need to speak and do things
You
and
have to find your voice and on your platform. Exactly.
then I think you can start winning. So tell me, how did you move to plant-based? Oh,
So the
when did that
plant-based,
journey?
yeah, my plant-based journey it's been a journey. Let's just put it that way. So I'd always played around with the vegetarian diet at first. So when I was in Cape Town, studying medicine, it was really easy. I was staying with my mom at the time. And what we would do is we would get fresh seafood. The fish is great, So we would just have fish and then veggies. So I was pescatarian and I really, really enjoyed that. Then I moved to Joburg to work as a doctor. And then that was a nightmare because obviously, as I've just explained, you have all of these crazy working hours, coming home, having to focus on my meals was just, I didn't have the
Mm.
energy and I didn't have enough in me to put effort into my food. And so what ends up happening generally, as we know, when people have a busy lifestyle, you just search for what's the most convenient. So it was a lot of those, those ready-made meals, those frozen meals, all those processed things that I started eating again during medical school, just because it's convenient, pop it into the microwave, it's done, you don't have to think about it.
Mm.
But what started happening when I was eating this way and when I was working as a doctor was my skin. Wow, I had like this hectic breakout of pimples. I don't know whether it was the stress of medicine, me not sleeping, and my diet. It was probably all three, but it really was a bad manifestation on my skin, a visible sign actually of my body saying, this isn't working.
And
What you're doing.
how were you eating? What kind of food were you
I was
eating? Those.
eating, so like things like those pasta meals.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Those
yeah.
knorr, there's, I think it's knorr, right? Is it knorr,
Is it
where
that
it's in a packet
noodles? The
and
noodles.
it's like noodles. Yeah. So instant noodles, obviously, I mean, that's
Oh my
everybody's go-to. If
goodness.
you haven't had instant noodles at the end of a busy day, then I don't know. So instant noodles, that those pasta things where or the soups, the soup where you just add water
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like instant soup, that kind of stuff,
Oh my
just
goodness.
really bad stuff. Or if it was really bad, and I was a new doctor, so I was
Mm,
making enough money to
mm.
order Uber Eats,
Nazo.
takeouts, all of those things, you know? So it was just not good.
Yeah.
And I think that the food, me not having the right food, lacking sleep and the stress just led to me feeling really heavy. I would say I was mildly depressed and just lost, you know? I felt like my body wasn't happy. I
Yeah.
think everybody can tell when your body's feeling that
You
way.
do. You do.
And so it was kind of at the time when I decided to leave medicine. I did a little bit of time in corporate. I then had more time in the evenings to focus on my food. And I really wanted to sort out my skin. So that's when I decided to try and go vegetarian. I didn't really like the pescatarian idea in Joburg. I was a little bit skeptical about the fish and how fresh the fish was. I didn't know where it was coming from.
Yeah.
So I decided to just go vegetarian. And that
Can you,
went pretty well.
before you go on,
Yes, yeah, sorry, Timo.
before you go on, just for people who don't know, what is a pescatarian?
So a pescatarian is someone who has fish and then is just vegetables. So
Okay.
they cut out chicken, white meat, and red meat, and then the only meat, kind of meat that they eat is fish
Yeah,
or
because
seafood.
no, I understand when you say it was a bit harder in Joburg because there's no sea really, so you wouldn't really know
Exactly.
where the fish comes from.
Where is this coming from? Like
How
how fresh is this? You know?
how was the fish treated, and so
Yeah,
on.
all of it.
What was it fed, and how long did
Exactly,
it take
exactly.
the fish to
To
move from?
get, yeah.
Uh, yeah,
Exactly.
there's
So
that.
I did the fish idea didn't really suit me living in Joburg. I think if you're in a coastal city, it's a different story. But being in land, what is it called? Landlocked. Yeah.
Yeah.
Being landlocked in a landlocked city, that didn't really serve me.
Mm,
So I decided to go vegetarian, but it was my first experience of going vegetarian where I wasn't at home. And what I ended up doing was because I knew how to, I'd been cooking before because I was living away from home. My vegetarian diet was basically exactly the same meals that I'd been eating before, but without the meat,
okay.
right?
Okay.
So, for example, if I would usually have, I don't know, like a stew, for example, like a beef curry, all I would do is I'd take the meat out and put a bit more potatoes in, and that would be my meal. And what I ended up finding was that I was having a lot of cravings. I was missing meat a lot. I wasn't feeling full. And I think a big part of that was because my body was used to eating these meals that I was eating, but something was missing.
Mm,
And my taste buds and my tummy could tell that I just cut out the meat. So that didn't go very well, didn't last very long, and I ended up eating meat again. And the whole cycle kind of continued. But then what happened was we fast forward about another year. I opened up the yoga studio. I found my business partner, Vanessa, and she's plant-based and she's a cook, which is, her cooking is like incredible. And so she taught me about how to cook a plant-based diet.
okay.
And that was actually completely opposite to what I was doing. It wasn't about removing the meat from previous dishes. It was about preparing dishes from start to finish without meat, if that makes
Okay.
sense.
Yeah, that makes
So
sense.
the meals that I would be having, in other words, there's no way that you could add meat to it and it would taste good.
Mm,
It works being composed of plants.
mm,
And so when I started to learn about these new recipes, how to work with the different ingredients, because plant-based diet, you have things like tofu and just things that you wouldn't really know how to cook, ingredients that are quite challenging to cook if you don't know how. She taught me about how to do that. And it was honestly after meeting her and her showing me how she's done it that I've now been plant-based since I think it was October last year, so almost a year of being plant-based, and I haven't had cravings. My body feels lighter, it feels energized. My shopping bill is so much cheaper because the meat is gone, and I don't feel like I'm missing anything. My skin
yeah.
is, if you
Yeah.
had seen me a couple of years ago, it's completely different. So
Mm,
that's been my journey. It hasn't
mm,
been as quick as just cut
mm,
out the meat and then go. It's been learning my way, learning what works for me, what
mm,
doesn't work for me,
mm.
and then really embracing the plant-based lifestyle completely.
Oh, so
Yeah.
you were not one of those people who saw Game Changers and then decided, then I'm also gonna be a vegetarian, and tried it
I've
out.
watched all the documentaries.
Uh,
I wasn't just one. I was like, I watched the animal ethical ones, and I was like,
okay,
okay, ethically, this is the right thing to do. I
okay,
watched the environmental ones where they
yeah.
talk about water consumption and climate change and how that's linked to animal agriculture. And I was like, okay, environmentally, tick.
Mm-hmm.
And then Game Changers was kind of like the cream of the crop. It was like, oh, so I can be a boss athlete as well and be plant-based. And
Mm,
so it's all of these things. For me, being plant-based is it ticks so many boxes. It's not just one for me.
Yeah, because you are continuously learning over time all these things, and the more you learn, the more you can share with other people. It it may not work for them,
Yeah,
but like I said, what works for you may not work for the next person. So people need to
totally.
people. I like to believe that people are their own scientific experiments. You need to experiment
Totally.
and see what works for you. Like for me right now, I've been learning about the circadian rhythm. So I'm
Mm,
trying to understand. Okay, we eat when the sun rises, and we stop eating before it goes down. So I'm trying learn
amazing.
to learn those things. I haven't gone to the moon part because sometimes I realize when it's full moon, I feel a bit different. How
Oh, yeah.
I feel a bit. So I'm like, I need to investigate what's going on here. You know, the environment is strange. It's
It
real.
is,
It's really strange.
it's so if you look at our diets or just our lifestyles historically, especially as Africans, nature dictated everything, the seasons of what crops would be planted when, and then that translates to how heavy your meal is, say in winter, how light it is in summer. You're right, the times, if you think about people having without electricity having to cook certain meals, daylight was probably the time where you had the time to, add
Mm,
certain spices and things like
mm,
that, whether at nighttime you're kind of tuning back in. So all of these things, I love what you said about each individual being their own scientific experiment. And I think that what I call it is intuitive eating as well. That's another thing is find what feels good for you, find what diet or what routine makes you feel like you're your optimal self, and stick to it. It doesn't
mm.
have to be what Mang Mang is saying, or what this other person is doing.
There are a
If it
lot of
works for you
mammals.
and you're healthy and you feel healthy and you feel good, then that's the way to go. But also don't trick yourself into believing that it's the right thing for you just because it tastes good
Yeah,
and it's convenient and
and
things, because we've all been down that road before.
and because it worked for Mang Mang influence or whatever, don't think that it's gonna work for you. Do your research. Like
Yeah.
for instance, I'm gonna go plant based for 7 days.
Mm,
For 7 days. I don't know when. Maybe I'll do it before my birthday. 7 days before my birthday, and
nice.
see what it feels like. So that when one of my clients that I'm coaching, and says, "Hey, I want to try plant based," I can say, "Oh, you need to look out for this. You need to look out for that." Uh,
Such a great idea.
the first 3 days are going to be shaky. Your body does not know what's
Yeah.
going on. You're going to give it a shock, and so that I can give them, experienced knowledge from my experience.
Yeah.
Because right now
Yeah.
I can give somebody experience. Okay, look, I was overweight. I did this. I did this. I did this. I did this. I lost the weight. I found out my self-esteem was still low. The weight came back again. So
Wow.
it's not really about you losing weight. It's what are you thinking of yourself
Yeah.
first? Because you can lose
Mm,
the
mm,
weight
mm.
and look slimmer, but still think like a loser and think you're a loser the whole
Wow.
time. So that was my
Yeah.
story. I was like, okay, I lost the weight.
I
Then
love that.
looked myself in the mirror. I'm like, I'm not good enough.
I don't like what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I'm not good enough. People are saying you look good. You're like, oh, thank you. But when you are alone, you're like, I'm not good enough. You look, hey, this tummy, there's still some fat
Wow.
here. I need to make changes there. Yeah. So yeah, it's been a long
Yeah.
journey.
I think our bodies are the most incredible things. You know, they're basically our little temples that guide us through our lives, you know. And it's short-sighted to think that you can just fix your body and the way that it looks and all your problems are going to be sorted out, because most of the time when we really delve deeper, we realize that it's our psyche and it's our mind and it's our thoughts that then reflects what our body looks like or feels like. And it's you have to improve the whole picture. You know, if you're going on a self-improvement journey, it's like you say, it's not just about losing weight or having your body look a certain way. It's about also trimming out the thoughts that you have in your mind.
So you'd believe it's
What
a...
is that? Sorry, Dimon, give me
No,
a
it's okay.
second.
Okay. Yeah, you were saying?
Yeah, I was just saying that, you know, you have to see yourself as you're a complex thing, you're a complex being, you know. So if you are going on a journey of self-improvement, yes, fix your diet, start to move a little bit more, but also do some healing in terms of your emotion and your heart. Is there resentment that you're holding on to in terms of yourself, or because of what somebody else told you? As you spoke about your self-esteem, that may have been things that other people were telling you, that you internalized, that you held on to, that you've believed ever since they've said it to you. So you really have to take the time to clear away everything, the thoughts, the self-criticism, the self-judgment, if you really want to feel like you're a new person. Because I think that's what everybody's looking for when it comes to transformation. They're looking to feel different. And you won't achieve that if you're just focusing on one part of yourself.
Yeah, because it's so holistic. There's just a lot of things. Other other day I was asking them, so how are your relationships? She meant, I'm like, hey, how are your
Cricket.
relationships? How are your relationships with other people? How? And I said to her, okay, let's look at this. When you eat, are you watching the TV? She's like, yes, Kara. You don't have a good relationship with food then, because you need to, when you are like, I'm a quick eater, so I've been learning to eat slower. I put a
Oh,
time. I'm
that's
like,
me too. I went to boarding school, and in boarding school, you better eat quickly because it's going to run out. You're under a time frame.
yeah, and it's a bad habit. So I'm teaching myself to eat slower. No TV, no phone, no laptop, and we eat on a table. Not in the car, not in the car, not in the bus, not on the train. So you can have a sense, okay, after eating, this meal makes you feel this way. I'm chewing a bit slower now. Okay, after, how did it make, do I need to complete the whole meal or do I go 80%? Because I think we live in a world where we are overeating. That is why I said to you that this circadian rhythm thing, it's kind of helping me. Like, oh, eating. And remember, in the old days, people used to hunt. So they'll hunt,
Yes.
and then
And
they'll...
then you've burnt all those calories, you
Yes,
know, you've
yes.
got your exercise for the day, and then you eat.
Then you eat again. And those people, sometimes they'll spend 24 hours without eating because they'll be looking for the next thing to hunt for. So they go into a fast. So as humans right now, everything is so quick. Uber, what, fast food. So it's a challenge. And I think these holistic methods, people need to incorporate to make that big change.
Totally. There's a mindfulness practice which is all about slow eating and being mindful while you eat, where it's about incorporating all of the senses. So take a moment to smell what your food smells like, to feel the texture of it in your mouth. Is it crunchy? Is it smooth? You know, taste the flavors. Is it salty? Is it bitter? Is it sour? And then again, when, like you said, once it reaches your belly, how does it make you feel? Are you full? Or do you still need some more? And all of these things, again, you know, if you do a mindfulness practice like that, it's also a pause for your mind, because instead of your mind thinking about the program that you're watching on TV, or, you know, getting to that meeting, if you're on the train, your mind is focused on what's happening in the present moment. And that also decreases stress, decreases the production of stress hormones, which is better for your body. So it's completely holistic. And if you look at these more ancient practices, these indigenous practices across the world, you realize that they're all saying the same thing. They're all saying the
Mm,
same thing. Slow down, be in the present moment, you know,
mm,
take it easy, do what's right, do what's healthy. And it's about living in the modern day, this modern age that we're in, but still taking the knowledge that we had back then and
mm,
using it as we live
mm,
our lives now.
mm. Because a lot of people, we have all these information, but they tell you this, and then you go and read another book to try and validate what you have already know. So you read that book, then you read another book, getting knowledge that you already know about, instead of taking action. And
Yeah,
that's where a lot of issues are. I wanted to
yeah.
ask you your relationship with your partner, um, your work partner.
Oh, my work
Your
partner.
work
Okay.
partner,
Yes.
not the other one. Your work partner. How did you guys come about, and how did you decide? Okay, let's start this, because there's not a lot of black females. Even, actually, there's not a lot of black people who own yoga studios. That's that.
Yeah.
It's always some white. It's always white women with
Yes.
who are not wearing shoes, different colorful hair, easy clothing. You don't really get black
Yeah.
females, black women or men, whatever the case may be, who are doing what you guys are doing. So how did you guys come together and decide, Chief,
Totally.
let's do this thing? Hmm?
So, I mean, I think it goes down to both of us. We both studied in Cape Town, but we hadn't met. But the reason why that's important is we had a lot of mutual friends, Vanessa and I. So I had friends at UCT, she had friends at UCT, and a lot of them were the same. And it was in university where both of us, I think, really started our yoga journey. Where I was in Cape Town, I've always been a very athletic person. In high school, I did athletics. I loved short distance running, hockey, team sports. I was very competitive, and exercise was a really big part of my life. But when I got to medicine, because so much of my time was dedicated to my studies, I found that the competitive team sport didn't really fit into my lifestyle anymore. I didn't have enough time to do training and to go and do games or athletics meetings. And so I was looking for something that wasn't competitive because I was quite stressed with my studies. And I was looking for something that calmed me down. And so I decided to go to a yoga studio to try it out. I'd done yoga before with my mom ages ago when I was really young, like 5 years old. So the seed had kind of been planted there, but I hadn't done it since. And I went to this yoga studio and I loved the yoga practice, but I was the only Black person there. They were giving instructions that couldn't work with my body. I had a bit of a bum. My toes, my feet, for some reason, didn't point like this. They just
Mm.
looked like that. I don't know if you know what I'm talking
Oh,
about.
I hear you. I
But
know.
my body was different. My
Yeah.
body was different to the person teaching. The music that they were playing wasn't music that I listened to. When they would talk about, at the start of every yoga class, you often talk about a certain theory, like a philosophy, and you link it into your personal life and what you're going through. And most of the yoga teachers weren't going through the same thing as me because, they were white, privileged. They didn't have the same experience. But I kept going because that was the only way for me to access yoga. And Vanessa was having the similar experience also in Cape Town, but at other yoga studios. So when I decided to start my own yoga studio and my own business, I started it off on my own. But the most important thing for me was representation. I wanted to make sure that when I was building the team of yoga teachers, it was yoga teachers of color from different backgrounds, different body shapes, so that if anybody off the street came into that room and saw a yoga teacher, they could recognize something of themselves in that teacher. They didn't feel like they were separate to what they were being taught. And I really wanted the studio to welcome people who felt other in wellness spaces. Black people, queer, the people in the queer community, people with medical conditions or disabilities, just generally people who would see a post, an Instagram post of yoga of this white, thin woman doing this handstand and who would feel like that had no correlation with them.
Mm.
Those were the people that I was looking for. And so I started off the yoga studio. It was great. We were going for about 3 months, but I'm kind of like the type of person where I have a vision and I can implement it and start it, but then keeping it going is a little bit difficult for me. I tend to like want to hop onto the next new idea. You know, I'm kind of that personality type. And so after starting the thing, I was like, okay, what do I do now? I've got this, I've done what I needed to do. And a lot of my friends kept on saying to me, oh, I know this other Black female yogi. She was also at UCT. You need to meet her. You need to meet her. And I kept on brushing them off and being like, yeah, you know, she's just Black. She's just a yoga teacher. That doesn't mean we're going to get along. Like,
Yeah, because that's
you know,
important. You need to get
and
along.
yes. And then we met and we thought we were just going to have a meeting to get to know each other and maybe collaborate on an event or something. And we ended up speaking for the whole day. And all of the dreams that she had were the same as my dreams. The way she saw the world was the same as me. We had the same past experiences. It almost felt like we knew each other from another life. And we met one more time after that and had exactly the same experience. And after just 2 meetings, we decided to become business partners. And we've been business partners for about 2.5 years now. And she's like my soul sister. It feels like it was meant to be. We disagree on things, but it's small things. We managed to sort it out. We agree on so many things. And she's helped take the business to new heights and new places. Also because she had exactly the same experience of loving the yoga practice, loving what it did for her, but feeling like she didn't belong in that space. So we love our little business, The Nest. All of our teachers are female yoga teachers of color. We've just started our yoga teacher training. So now we're training a new batch of yogis to become yoga teachers.
I saw
And
that.
we were the first completely people of color run yoga teacher training on the continent. Can you believe that? The first
Congratulations.
yoga teacher training run by Black people in Africa
It doesn't
is in
happen a lot.
2020. It's like,
We
how is that even a thing?
possible. Mm.
Yeah, and we're so happy. We've got 17 people who are joining us, and every single one of our participants are people of color. So it means that once we're done, we have 17 more people who are now going to go spread the word of yoga to our community, to people who look like us, and that's how the change starts to happen. So yeah, it's been an incredible, incredible journey.
Did you ever think that it will get to a point where you'll be teaching other people how to
You
be?
know, it was always on my radar, but I thought our first one we'd have maybe like 3 people, maybe 4. Generally, as a yoga studio, when you do your first teacher training, it's quite small because people don't know what the course is going to be like. You know, there are lots of other yoga teacher trainings around, but clearly people are looking to, especially people of color, are looking for places where they can be guided by other people who look and who share the same experience as them. So I never in my wildest dreams did I think that it would look like what it's looking like. It's been, I still have to pinch myself. It's like, oh, we've got 17 people, all of them are people of color. I was worried that maybe we just have white people doing our teacher training because a lot of, you know, yoga is kind of a bit more accepted in the white community because that's what you see all the time. So those were my expectations, but it's been amazing.
No, expect a black man to come also there very
I'm
soon.
there. I'm there. I'm waiting for you.
And please, how would you define yoga to someone who just came in? How would you define
Yeah.
yoga?
So the word yoga is actually directly translated as union.
Okay.
And it's union of mind, body, and soul.
Mm-hmm.
So yoga as a practice is not just about the physical practice, which is what most people know it to be, you know, where you go into a handstand or you do all of these crazy poses and then you post it on Instagram. That's a very, very small part of it. But what it actually is a practice that incorporates mental well-being, spiritual well-being, physical well-being, to try to get you to rediscover who you truly are,
Okay.
beyond your name, your personality, your paycheck, where you live. Who is deep down? Who is that
Mm.
person? What makes them passionate? What makes them upset? What do they need to heal from? And yoga is just a tool or a technique or technology to help you to find yourself again. And you can do that through breath work, by using the breath to help you heal. You can do it through meditation, using meditation to still the mind, to help you to discover who you are apart from your thoughts. Or you can use the physical poses, putting your body into different shapes, discomfort, to unlock tension in the body, and again, to help you to move beyond just your physical body, deeper inside.
Mm. Mm. Where
Yeah.
does this practice come from?
It comes from the East. So this is a controversial topic, and we're actually doing a lecture on yoga history
Okay.
tomorrow with our teacher trainers.
Okay.
But if we're talking about the word yoga and the practice of yoga, it stems from India,
Okay.
where it was a practice that was linked into almost Indian civilization, where at 1 p.m. lunchtime every day, it was generally for men. The yoga practice was seen as a practice specifically for men, where it would be a community. Yeah, that's interesting. It was like a men's
That's very
only
strange.
practice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how it began.
Wow.
And it was a specific time in the day where the working class would all come together in a communal hall, do yoga, release their stress, release their tension, and then go off and work again. And generally the working class was made up of men, because women were, having to take care of the home and things like that. So that's where yoga initially stemmed from. But if we look at, you know, practices that incorporate breath, mind, and body, we actually see traces of this in Africa, where there's the Kemetic yoga,
Hmm.
where in ancient Egypt, and even before that, they did specific poses in the body, linked it to the breath, linked it to movement, and used it as a form of healing. So it's definitely an ancient practice. It's an indigenous practice. It just depends on what you call it, I suppose. But I like to say that it's been around in all of our civilizations since the beginning. As
Mm.
soon as people learned that they could move their bodies with their breath to bring about healing, to me, that's what yoga is. And so if you look at it that way, we can trace it to the African continent, which I think is super exciting, because it's just like reclaiming your spirituality, as an African, as a Black woman, or as a Black male.
Mm.
It's a nice way to reclaim your heritage and know
Mm.
that your ancestors were doing something like this before.
Mm. Who would you say should do yoga, or why?
Everybody.
Why why should people do yoga? Why should people do yoga? Why should people be doing it?
So the reason why is yoga. There's so many different forms of yoga. There's yoga for people who are looking to lose weight. There's yoga for people who are looking to detox.
Okay.
There's yoga for people who are looking to become more flexible. There's yoga for people who are on a self-evolution, spiritual journey. So really, yoga can, because it's made up of so many different components,
Yep.
it can suit anybody and whatever their goals are. But the reason why it's such an incredible practice is because all you need is your body, essentially. You don't really need a yoga mat. That's a common misconception. Most people who started off doing yoga did it on the floor. This
Hmm.
thing of a mat is modern day. You don't need to wear anything specific as long as you can move in it. And so it can be really affordable. Or
Yeah.
once you know how to do the specific poses, you just need an instructor to take you through how to do the poses safely. You can do it in your own time. If you're taught how to do it safely, there's no limit to how much you can do. And it's I think for that reason, I find it to be really accessible for people, regardless of how much they're earning, regardless of how old or young they are. And it's a really inclusive practice in that, some things like running, for example, or gym, doesn't suit people if they have, you know, specific injuries or specific body types. You kind of need to work up to that. Whereas with yoga, you can start today, and if you have the right teacher, you'll be able to do a yoga class and you'll find benefit from it from the first class. So those are my reasons for punting it. I could go on and on
Yeah, no, I can hear. I hear
promoting
that.
yoga.
Because,
Yeah.
like you said, people can wear anything. But now, media is saying there is specific clothes that people must wear to do yoga, and you are
Yeah.
saying no. There's no need for
Yeah.
you to buy. Now a person is sitting there at home. Hey, I don't have the clothes. I don't have a mat, and you're saying no,
Yeah.
comrade, come as you are.
Just come as you are. I think, you know, this is with everything. I mean, I don't think our ancestors used to go running to hunt and think about the tackies that they were wearing and making sure that they had an armband, you know, so that they could listen to their music. They just went, you know. So all
Yeah.
of this stuff about if you want to move your body, you have to wear matching tights and a matching top and have the latest gadgets and the latest sneakers. It's a real barrier for people because they feel like they need to look a certain way to call themselves a runner or a cyclist or a yogi. That's completely not true. All you need to do is bring yourself, have the mindset that you want to do it, and especially with yoga, that's all you need.
Now there are different types of yoga that are around. Which ones do you guys mostly, or maybe we should list them first, and you can just tell us which ones you guys specialize more in. Because if you go to different gyms, there's suspension yoga, there's what do you call it, heat yoga, I think.
Yes, hot
Yeah,
yoga.
hot yoga.
Yeah.
Yeah, hot yoga.
Yeah.
So I wanted to find out what are the different types and which ones do you guys mostly focus on?
Cool. So, yoga as it began traditionally is a sequence of yoga poses, right? So, if you have a style of yoga where you have a sequence of yoga poses, then generally you're doing more of an ancient style. So, those styles are hatha yoga. Hatha yoga, you do one pose, then you move on to the next pose, you hold it for a little bit, then you move on to the next pose, you move on to a little bit. That's hatha yoga, very traditional. You
Okay.
get vinyasa yoga and ashtanga yoga, which are similar to hatha in that the poses are the same, but the class is structured differently in that the movements link from one to the other. So instead of like hatha, you have one pose, separate, another pose. With vinyasa and ashtanga, you go from one pose straight into the other one, straight into the other one. It's almost like they lead into each other. It's a flow. That's why the other word for it is a flow class, because the movements flow from one into the other. Then you have the more spiritual, I would say, types of yoga, like Kundalini yoga. That incorporates a lot of meditation, breath work, more repetitive movements, not really about the physical postures, but more about using the body to have a spiritual experience. And then we have the more new age types of yoga. So you have the more calming, um, almost like soft, gentle practices for people who want to de-stress or to give back to themselves. That's restorative yoga and yin yoga. And then the really like the fad yogas is the hot yoga. Bikram is the hot yoga, where that just originated from seeing that people practicing yoga in India were practicing in a hot climate, moving it to the east where it's colder, and then adding heaters to the room to simulate the Indian environment. That's exactly what hot yoga is basically trying to make it feel like you're in India, so you sweat, so it's humid when you practice, even if you're in Europe, for example. So
You
that's
said
where hot yoga came from.
it's a fed from Kong.
I don't think it's Hong Kong. I just
Okay.
think it's not traditional. It's like
Oh,
it's
okay.
like an evolution of the
Oh,
practice.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yep.
And then what was the last one? Then you've got aerial yoga. So aerial yoga, I would also say is, I'm going to use the word fad in the sense that it's not traditional. Aerial yoga is almost like a combination of aerial gymnastics with yoga, where you're suspended from the air, and then you do the traditional yoga poses using the props of the
Okay.
hammock to help you get into it. So
Okay.
the poses that we do at the nest space are kind of more the traditional ones. So we do vinyasa, that's the flow. We do hatha, we do kundalini, And then for people who are looking for something a bit softer, especially people who are a little bit older, pregnant ladies, for example, or even people like, people who are quite fit, but who are looking for something to do on their recovery days, for example, we do yin yoga and restorative yoga as well.
Okay. No, that sounds cool.
There's a
So
form of yoga for everybody. Yeah.
what kind of people are you working with who are with different kinds of diseases? Maybe you have somebody with
Yeah.
arthritis and
I've
so on.
had, I've had, yeah, I've had quite a few cancer patients, which is quite interesting. People who've been diagnosed and are kind of in stage 3 or stage 4, where they generally just need to take things at a slower pace. I generally do, like I was saying to you, the restorative and yin yoga with them, because it's not so much about breaking a sweat or even strengthening the muscles. It's more about being able to release, feel comfortable in your body, pain management, that kind of stuff. I've also done a lot of work with people with back injuries, people who've had surgery on their backs where they might not be able to do certain poses like back bends or things immediately. And then also people who are not fully mobile, so people with rheumatoid arthritis or issues with the joints, where say they need to do yoga in a chair because they can't use their full body, that kind of thing. So those are generally the people that I deal with, or just people who have injuries, someone who's broken their leg but doesn't want to be completely inactive while they're recovering, that kind of stuff.
And how's that been going? Enjoying it?
Oh,
Because
it's
it's a challenge.
amazing. It's amazing. I find that people with conditions that affect mobility end up a part of that process that is really difficult for them is almost feeling like their body is betraying them or turning on them, especially, a lot of the time you have people who are fit, who are active, and then they get diagnosed with cancer or they have a car accident that injures their back. And it's almost a sense of feeling like you've lost a part of yourself.
Yeah.
So
Become
teaching
depressed.
people like this, yeah, it's massive.
It's massive.
I can imagine, if you can think about it, even for me,
Mm.
if I wasn't able to move around in my body, that would be hectic. It's
Depressing.
hectic.
It's
Yeah.
depressing.
So when you are working with people like that and you're able to get them to learn how to use their body again in a different way, it's almost like them rediscovering a part of themselves. And that's really fulfilling. It's really
Mm.
great to get people to feel that way, especially people with cancer, stage 4, who aren't going to live very long. If you're able to give them a practice that they can do in their last years or last months, whatever it could be, where they can heal a little bit of themselves, I think it's magical.
When you have a client like that who is just about to pass away, does that make you feel grateful for life and living and being grateful for what you have, the food you have? I can imagine
Totally.
the kind of impact that kind of clients have on you.
Yeah, totally. That was one of my biggest appreciations from my time in medicine as well, was getting to see people in their final moments, talking to people who knew that they were going to die, whether it was of them being elderly or whether it was because of disease, and just learning from them what they were thinking about in those final moments. No one thinks about, I wish I had made more money, I wish I was more famous. It's like,
Mm,
I wish I had spent more time with my kids. I
mm,
wish, that it's that kind of stuff. And
yeah.
so that gives you an understanding of what's really important in life. And it's often the small things, the things that people tend to take for granted, that people end up thinking about in their final days. And it definitely makes you a lot more grateful for what you have. But also it makes you realize that can be any one of us. We never know when our time to go is. So I've seen young people pass away from car accidents or being diagnosed with cancer in their 20s. Like,
Mm,
this is not something that happens to a select few people. It can
mm,
happen to anybody.
mm.
So it really reminds you to use each day. And that's become this cliche thing, which is crazy. It's become cliche to say, treat every day as if it's your last, but live
It
your
is.
life as if it is,
Mm,
because it may be.
mm, mm, mm. I wanted to ask you something. My train of thought. Yeah, completely lost it. Oh yeah, here we go. If somebody is at home right now and they wanted to start their yoga journey, what kind of movements would you suggest they start with to get them going?
So I would say if you're a beginner, the best thing to do to make sure that you don't hurt yourself or injure yourself is start off with whether it's a week or a month at a yoga studio being guided by a teacher. And let the teacher know that if it's something that you don't want to continue and you want to practice at home, let the teacher know so that they teach you knowing that they're teaching you to do it on your own. Because often what I find ends up happening with yoga is you can do these certain exercises from the get-go, but sometimes they aren't done correctly and then you don't get the benefits and you end up feeling a bit disillusioned by the practice. So I would say to somebody who wants to begin, search for yoga studios in your area. Most yoga studios will have a beginner's package where it's like 1 month, a week for say 100 Rand or whatever it may be. Join for that week, pick up, some poses, be taught how to do them properly, and then go home and then you can practice them yourself. Or then you can go onto YouTube and be taught on YouTube and things like that. But I definitely say yes, sorry, Timo, you were going
No,
to
you
say
can
something.
continue. I'll tell you
Okay.
after.
Yeah, I would definitely say if you're an absolute beginner, get some guidance firsthand, and then after that, then you can practice in your own time and in your own space.
So you guys are teaching people one-on-one, and then some are just classes, I'm guessing.
Yeah. So right now we've always done one-on-one and group classes. Right now we're doing our one-on-one classes in person because of COVID, and then our group classes are online, which is nice.
Yeah,
So
I
I
think
find that online classes are also great for beginners. A lot of beginners are quite scared to do online classes, but they're actually really good. No one's judging you. You're in your own space. You feel quite comfortable. But the important thing with online classes is when you're starting, do the live online classes where the teacher is teaching you in real time, where they can see you and they can say, no, change your leg to be this way, change your leg to be that way, rather than doing the online classes where it's a recorded class, and the teacher's just taking you through your paces. So that's what I would recommend.
yeah. So I do believe though that before a person starts the group, I don't know what kind of numbers you have within the groups, but I believe that the one-on-one will be a lot more beneficial for people. That's why even with my coaching and training, I don't like training people, 4 people at a time.
Mm,
I think
mm.
people tend,
Especially at first.
especially at first, because I've seen some people training 20 people over a Zoom call or 30 people over
Oh,
a
wow.
Zoom call. Some of
Mm,
them have no training experience whatsoever because it's difficult training them in person.
yeah.
In person, 30 people in person, it's very difficult, especially when they are new. So I do agree with you when you say people one-on-one could work, and then maybe a group, maybe 2 or 3 people at a time, that
Yeah.
also can work.
Yeah.
They can also work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What we do is so we've made all of our classes are beginner friendly.
Okay.
Usually in yoga studios you'll find that some classes are have advanced on them, some are for beginners, but we feel that's against the practice. Everybody should practice in the same class. No one's above anybody. But what we do have is we have a class which is called Yoga Fundamentals, which I teach every Thursday. And that class is specifically for people who are brand new because we go step by step by step. And it's
Okay.
really slow and I think you're right. I generally keep that very small, 3 people or so generally come. And that's a nice way for people to ask questions without feeling like they're holding up the entire group, especially if you specifically put that class aside as that time where people can ask their questions, they can tell you what they're struggling with and all of those things. But even with our normal classes, another thing that I found with yoga studios is that when your classes get a bit too big, it becomes really impersonal. 20 people is tough to manage, man. You aren't really
Very.
able to see everybody and how everybody's doing. So we keep it, our classes are around 8 if we're like full, 10 max. And that helps to at least be able, you know everybody by name, you know if anybody has any injuries, you're able to see everybody, and that makes it a lot more personal as well.
Yeah, you see, we are not all in it for the quick money. Remember, some people they want to get 30 people, whether they are doing it right, whether they are progressing, they don't care. Because
As long as the numbers are there.
as long as the numbers are there and they're getting that money. Okay, I don't want to waste, take you away all of your time. We could talk for a
Not a waste at
long.
all.
We can talk for long about these things. So
Yeah.
I want to ask you 4 questions. I call them the dynamics of health Q&A. So
Okay.
the first question is, if you had to buy anyone, if you had to buy a friend a book, eh, which book would it be and why?
I think I'd buy them my favorite book, which is called Siddhartha.
Mm,
It's by an author called Hermann Hesse,
okay.
and it's almost like a fictional slash biographical short novel about the early days of Buddha and Buddha growing up.
Mm,
And it's about how it's just a wonderful way of explaining the spiritual journey and the different aspects of the spiritual journey, about going through a point in your life where it's all about deprivation, and the monk mentality, where you cut out all of your food, you isolate yourself from people, and you're basically a monk. Then there's the other phase where it's like the abundance phase, where it's all about wealth and prosperity and
mm,
fame and everything. And this book basically takes you through the life of Buddha before he became Buddha, as he traversed through these different stages of knowing himself and his spiritual journey before he became the spiritual leader that he did become. So I would recommend that. It's not very religious at all, but a really easy read, not too big. It's about this big. And
mm.
I've read it over and over again. It's just a wonderful book in terms of life lessons.
It's amazing you can read a book 6 times or 7 times, and each and every time you pick up something new. Your perspective
Yeah, I love
changes
that.
each and every
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
That's really nice. If you had to have lunch with anyone who is still alive in the world,
Mm,
who would that person be and why?
that's a tough one. That's a tough one. Who would I have lunch with? Maybe I'll go with, that's a tough one too.
Yeah.
I think I'll go maybe with Michelle Obama, just
Mm,
because I think her range of experience, she's gone from being a no name to being a big name. She's been somebody's partner to being her own self. So I think there's a lot to learn from her. But generally, I find, I get asked this question about role models all the time. And I often say that I don't really, my role models aren't people, it's their teachings. The
yes.
teachings are what I draw from people,
Mm,
and
mm,
that's that. So I wouldn't say that Gandhi is my role model, but if I speak about his teachings and what he taught, it's same with Madiba, some of the things that he taught, then it's a lot easier to say, yeah, this is what I follow in that. Because sometimes individuals, as we all know, we can later find out through documentaries or
the dead stuff.
Netflix exposés that, that they're human and they made
Mm,
mistakes. So,
mm.
yeah.
Did you watch the Jeffrey Epstein documentary?
Oh my God.
Imagine if you go on publicly and you said, that guy is my role model. I
That's
want to
my
be.
role model.
And then
Well,
later,
we're just talking about Bikram yoga and hot yoga.
mm,
And Bikram was under huge fire for sexual assault and sexual harassment. And the whole
mm,
yoga community were like, what
taken.
does this mean about hot yoga? But it's like, are you doing hot yoga because you're idolizing the man who developed it? Or are you doing it because of the teachings,
Okay.
And if
Yeah.
you're following the teachings, then whatever the man did, these are
It
human
doesn't.
beings after all. Sometimes we put people on pedestals and expect them to to be our saviors, you know, or these shining examples of perfect people. And I don't think anybody is really like that.
Which slogan or which slogan do you, or quote, let me put it this way, a slogan or quote that you love and live by?
Oh, there's this, I don't know who said it, but there's a quote that says, we all live two lives, and the second life begins when you realize that you've come to the end of the first one. And that's just about, I think, living. So many of us live our lives believing that there's one way of doing things. You go to work, go home, blah, 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 blah. But so I think there's a point where you reach a stage where you're no longer happy, or you're no longer fulfilled, or you realize that your passion isn't being stirred. And that's where your second life of rediscovering who you are begins.
And I hear that. This thing of going to work, coming back home, watching TV, going to work. The only time you really enjoy your life is when you go to the toilet when you are at work, sitting on, or going for a smoke break. Other than that, you don't like your job. Nothing. That's
And you know, we work five out of 7 days a week. That's basically your whole life.
is there.
Your whole life spent going into a place that you don't enjoy. What for?
There goes your vitamin D sitting in that small cubicle the whole day, all day. No, I get you. I get you. No offense to people who are working in the office. No offense. No offense. Anesu, how would you like to be remembered? How would you like to be?
I think I'd like to be remembered as somebody who inspired others to live to their full potential by doing it myself. And by full potential, I mean doing what you love and what you are gifted at doing, and doing it well.
Just a quick one before we finish. Please just tell people what currently you are teaching. Like, I heard you have workshops that are going on, and it's a project that you recently started. Can you please just tell them what you're doing, and then if they want to join, when will there be a new intake, so that people can know about that?
Perfect. Yeah. So we are embarking on our yoga teacher training. So the group who are becoming yoga teachers, that program is now full. But from September to November, when the teacher training is happening, we're opening up some of the modules to the general public. So this weekend, we're doing a lecture on yoga history and decolonizing the yoga practice, where we're talking all about how yoga has been westernized, where it really came from, and how we can decolonize the practice. And we also have some other modules and short courses in the next 3 months, like the fundamentals of meditation, fundamentals of breath work, social media for conscious brands, all sorts of things. So we're doing a lot of short courses. Some of them are a day long, some of them are 2 day long, some of them are a month long. And we've set it up where people can either attend the live sessions as they go, or they can just join the course online and watch the recordings of the live sessions after. So that's what's coming up in the next 3 months. Really, really incredible lectures. We're doing some also on anatomy and physiology, talking about, you know, especially as it relates to exercise. So talking about muscle healing, muscle recovery, all of that stuff. So they can find that if you go onto our website, www.thenestspace.co.za. Under services, you'll see a tab that says short courses. You can just click on there and all of our courses will come up. Or you can follow us on @thenestspaceZA, and we post on our Instagram about all of the courses then and there. Most of them have payment plans to make them nice and affordable as well.
You know, I wish people, I'm gonna post this also on YouTube so that people can see how excited and passionate you are about this project. Also, I'm going to on the show notes, I'm going to give them the links so that they can go there and see what you're talking about once I get the information from you. So where can people find you? On the
Me.
socials.
Yes, so yoga has been, for me, has really been a practice that I feel has set me free. So my brand is Freedom Yoga. There's an H after the O. So that Om is kind of the word that is linked with the yogic philosophy. Om is the chant that we chant. So Freedom Yoga is my brand. My website and blog is www.freedomyoga.org. And I do a blog on zero-waste living, veganism, yoga, my own personal stuff. And then you can find me on social media at freedom_yoga. And you'll find me there.
That we forgot to talk about the eating place. Is that is it also at the nest? Is that also the nest?
That's also at the nest. Okay. It's all there. We've put it all in one shop. So yeah, you can come there, come meet us. We aren't open quite yet, but probably October. We're just playing it safe. We're the type of people who watch what happens to everybody else. We'll see what's going on in September, and if it's good, then we'll open in October. So you can come and get your vegan meals. We're going to be doing vegan cooking classes so that Vanessa can teach whoever comes, like she taught me, on how to really manage the plant-based diet. We've got a little grocer there, which has got all natural cosmetics, household supplies, all of that stuff. And then obviously our yoga studio and our therapy room.
Okay, no, I think we should leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Timo.
Thank you very much. Really enjoyed that. People, let's, especially men, gentlemen, let's go and do some yoga. This thing of thinking it's only for women is rubbish. Let's go out there.
Rubbish. It was actually developed for you guys. It's actually from the roots was made for men.
And so let's go out there and stop stigmatizing, saying that what's a woman thing. Let's go there and it's a nice way to build community and do an exercise movement that you have never done in your whole life. So let's go out there. It's not always about having big muscles and looking big. It's not always about that. So let's go out there, join the community, visit the nest, and meet people, eat some good food. So my sister, thank you very much.
Thank you, Timo. Thank you, and well done for this incredible work that you're doing. I'm honored to have been invited as a guest. Thank you for this awesome conversation. It's been great.
Thank you.